The Dirty John case tells the harrowing true story of John Meehan, a manipulative con man whose life of deception and abuse came to a violent and dramatic end. Known for his charm and lies, Meehan infiltrated the life of a successful interior designer, Deborah Newell, and left a trail of psychological terror not just for her but for multiple women before her. His case is one of the most chilling illustrations of coercive control, gaslighting, and domestic abuse in modern crime stories. Meehan's life was marked by manipulation from early on. He was born in California in 1959 and raised in San Jose in a family where deceit and grifting were not only common, but encouraged. His father reportedly taught him various cons like staging accidents for insurance money. This upbringing set the stage for Meehan's later life as a compulsive liar and predator. Meehan pursued higher education, attending the University of Arizona before moving on to the University of Dayton in Ohio to study anesthesiology. He appeared intelligent and capable, earning degrees and licensing that gave him access to vulnerable people in hospitals. But behind the respectable facade was a man who abused drugs, stole from employers, and manipulated everyone around him. His professional life was riddled with misconduct. Meehan stole Demerol and other powerful narcotics from hospital supplies. He would often fake injuries to obtain prescriptions. These patterns led to multiple arrests and his eventual dismissal from the medical field. His license to practice was revoked, and he was barred from health care. But he used his past credentials to maintain a convincing front. Meehan had a history of romantic manipulation long before Deborah Newell entered the picture. He used online dating platforms to identify women who were emotionally vulnerable, often those who had recently divorced, lost a partner, or experienced personal trauma. He targeted their empathy, presenting himself as a benevolent and successful professional who had endured hardships of his own. Before Deborah, Meehan was married to Tonya Sells, a nurse anesthetist whom he met while working in the medical field. They married in 1990 when Meehan was in his early 30s, and she was 25. For most of their marriage, Tonya believed she had married a kind and stable man. They had 2 daughters and built what seemed to be a normal suburban life in Ohio. However, Meehan kept a double life hidden from his wife. He lied about his past, including his real age and his criminal activities. Tonya discovered the truth when Meehan abruptly asked for a divorce after 10 years of marriage. Shocked and confused, she began investigating him and uncovered his multiple aliases, fraudulent behavior, and criminal record. Tonya eventually contacted the police and helped build a case against him, leading to his conviction on drug-related charges. Her bravery in exposing him helped prevent further damage at the time, though Meehan would re-emerge years later to continue his cons. Deborah Newell was a perfect target in Meehan's eyes. She was attractive, accomplished, and financially independent. A businesswoman with a thriving interior design company in Newport Beach, Deborah had been married and divorced multiple times. She met Meehan in 2014 through an over-50s dating website and was initially impressed by his confidence and passion. Meehan told Deborah that he was an anesthesiologist who had recently returned from serving with Doctors Without Borders in Iraq. He claimed to be an honest man who loved dogs, surfing, and charity. He said he was tired of casual relationships and was looking for a serious, lasting connection. He quickly began love-bombing her, showering her with compliments and attention. Within weeks of meeting, Meehan moved into Deborah's home. He claimed he didn't have a place of his own because he had just returned from overseas. He began suggesting they get married and isolated her from her family, particularly her daughters, who were skeptical of his intentions. He sowed seeds of doubt about her children, claiming they were too involved in her life. Deborah's daughters, Jacqueline and Tara Newell, were alarmed by Meehan almost from the start. Jacqueline, the eldest, especially distrusted him and voiced concerns that he was dishonest and aggressive. Tara, the youngest, felt creeped out by his behavior and the way he invaded their lives with little regard for boundaries. Despite the red flags, Deborah married Meehan just 2 months after meeting him. The wedding took place in Las Vegas, and she kept it a secret from her family. She later claimed she was swept up in the romance and wanted to believe she had found love again. Her isolation deepened, and Meehan's control grew stronger. Meehan's behavior quickly became more erratic. He controlled her finances, criticized her appearance, and began tracking her movements. When Deborah tried to assert herself, he would gaslight her, claiming she was imagining things or being paranoid. These tactics are classic hallmarks of coercive control, where the abuser dominates the victim psychologically. Eventually, Deborah grew suspicious of Meehan's inconsistencies. She started doing background checks and discovered disturbing information. He had a criminal record for drug theft, had served time in prison, and had several restraining orders filed against him by former partners. He was not a doctor at all. He had long since lost his license and was using fabricated stories to keep up appearances. When Deborah confronted Meehan with the truth, he became defensive and manipulative. He alternated between threatening her and pleading for forgiveness. She attempted to end the relationship multiple times, but Meehan kept returning, often with threats and emotional blackmail. Deborah eventually managed to escape Meehan's hold and went into hiding. She sold her house and tried to disappear. Meehan began stalking her and her family. He left threatening voicemails, followed them in public, and even attempted to have Deborah's cars towed by impersonating a repossession agent. The most terrifying consequences of Meehan's manipulation unfolded on August 20th, 2016. Tara Newell, who had been living in fear, was ambushed by Meehan in the parking lot of her apartment complex. He had waited for her with a knife, intending to abduct or possibly kill her. But Tara fought back. Using self-defense techniques she had studied and relying on sheer survival instinct, she wrestled the knife from Meehan and stabbed him multiple times, including a fatal wound to the eye. He died 4 days later in the hospital. The police ruled the killing as justifiable self-defense. The aftermath of Meehan's death revealed even more about his dark past. Dozens of women came forward with stories of being conned, abused, or threatened by him. His record included drug convictions, fraud, blackmail, and identity theft. He had used over 20 aliases to evade detection. Journalist Christopher Goffard investigated Meehan's life and published a multi-part series in the Los Angeles Times, which later became the hit podcast DirtyJohn. The podcast detailed every aspect of the case, from Meehan's early cons to the violent conclusion in that parking lot. It struck a chord with millions of listeners and brought national attention to the topic of coercive control. The story was adapted into a scripted television series in 2018, starring Connie Britton as Deborah and Eric Bana as Meehan. The show followed the events closely and brought the story to a new audience. It was praised for its sensitive and gripping portrayal of emotional abuse. Deborah Newell has since become an advocate for awareness around domestic abuse and manipulation. She speaks publicly about her experiences and educates others on how to spot the signs of coercive relationships. Her courage in sharing her story has empowered other survivors to come forward. Tara Newell also became a public figure, discussing trauma, PTSD, and survival. Her act of self-defense was both heroic and deeply traumatizing. She underwent therapy and eventually began working with other victims of violence to teach them self-defense and resilience. The DirtyJohn case served as a wake-up call for law enforcement and legal professionals about the dangers of psychological abuse. The justice system often failed to take emotional manipulation seriously until it escalated to physical violence. Meehan's ability to exploit loopholes and manipulate victims showed a glaring need for reform. Background checks, dating app safety features, and restraining order enforcement came under scrutiny. Advocates pushed for stronger protections for people in emotionally abusive relationships and for more training for law enforcement to recognize the signs early. The case also sparked broader discussions about how society views women who fall prey to charming but dangerous men. Victim blaming was common in initial reactions, but the deeper truth showed how even smart, capable people can be deceived. Deborah's story underlined the importance of listening to gut instincts, trusting the warnings of loved ones, and recognizing that emotional abuse is real and dangerous. It emphasized the insidious way control can be established through affection, not just fear. Meehan's legacy is one of manipulation, cruelty, and destruction, but the story of Deborah and Tara Newell transformed that legacy into one of survival, awareness, and strength. Their willingness to share their experience gave voice to countless others, living in the shadow of coercive control. Today, the Dirty John case is used in educational settings, police training, and advocacy work. It has become a landmark example of the psychological aspects of domestic abuse and the need for society to take non-physical threats seriously. Ultimately, the story of John Meehan is not just a tale of crime and deception. It is a powerful narrative of reclaiming control, surviving against the odds, and turning personal trauma into a public mission for justice and change.